Howdy friends, thanks for clicking on this video and joining in on this oversight, I think, on my part. If you go back on this channel, you'll see approximately 3 years ago I purchased this 1860 Army Sheriff's model manufactured by Pietta. I did a video taking the first shots and it shot a little high and obtrusively to the right. And I have since then dovetailed in a Remington front sight, and it looks like I profiled it, but I can't see anywhere in this channel or in my stack of paper plates that I actually sighted this thing in. So I'm going to quote John Lennon, "Life is what happens when you're busy making other plans." And that's my excuse, and I'm sticking to it. So what I want to do today, whether I sighted this in or not, it's actually irrelative, because when I did the first shots with this revolver, I was actually shooting 30 grains of my juniper gunpowder. I have since then discovered that mesquite gunpowder, or gunpowder made with mesquite charcoal, it's worded a little bit better, produces a lot more energy. And since that's what I'm going to be making and using in the field for myself here on out, then I need to recheck the sights on where this is going to shoot with 30 grains of my mesquite peanut shell blended charcoal. Okay, now I do have it loaded up, and I'm going to take it apart and show you guys something here real quick, because I've mentioned before on this channel, my revolvers don't cut a lead ring, because I've taken and I've chamfered the opening so that when I put a round ball in here, the round ball actually swages itself into the cylinder. And I'm going to move everything out into the sun that you can actually see that when the ball is seated, there is a complete lead ring around the inside of the cylinder around the ball. Alright, I'm in full sun, and I'll move it in and out and kind of rotate the cylinder so that you can hopefully see what I just mentioned about, you can see that ring of lead actually sealing the chamber. Now, with that being stated, I don't want anybody to get the impression that I'm relying on that to seal off the chambers, because I'm not. I still prefer to shoot with a felt wad in between the powder charge and the round ball. Okay, and what I'm shooting today, thanks again to my friend Broken Feather William, some time back I got a couple pounds of buffalo tallow that he rendered down. So what I'm shooting right now is felt wads that are actually lubricated with a blend of buffalo tallow and beeswax. But I also went back to putting lube in the forcing cone, as opposed to putting lube in front of the cylinders. Now, if you haven't seen it yet, on the channel Old Ranger, he did a video at this point using less lube in the front of the round balls, and he got a little better performance out of it. But that's on the channel Old Ranger, and you can go look at that and, you know, make up your own mind whether you want to use less or use more. But like I mentioned in the previous video, as far as I'm concerned, putting lube on the front of the chamber and shooting it and having that fire blow everything out, it's just a waste of lube. Years ago, when I was living in Arizona, I knew a lot of cowboy action shooters, and they recommended at that time just putting some lube in the forcing cone. And I made that a practice until I started making videos and watching videos on YouTube and seeing that people do this differently. And I'm going back to just putting lube in the forcing cone. And of course, I've always preferred using, and I will always continue to use, felt wads, because if I put lube in the front of this cylinder and I walk out in the woods in my holster and it gets hot like it did a couple days ago, that lube's gonna run and melt anyways, okay? So because I want to sight this in for how I would normally shoot this in the field, got a 30 grain powder charged felt wad and a .454 round ball. So I guess, and I do have the chronograph set up. I put a brand new battery in it today. It's kind of overcast, so I'm not really sure what's going to happen. If I get good numbers, great. If not, I'm not going to be overly concerned because my purpose today is to check the sights and see how this does with a 30 grain charge of my Mesquite peanut shell blend. So just in case if anybody's curious, it's 10:30 in the morning and we are 3 degrees shy of the high temperature of today, which is supposed to be 86. So right now it's not too terribly bad. All right, let's see what we can do. Well, I think that's a good number, 735. And I shot parallel with the bullseye, so I think my height is just right, but it's still shot to the right. .701. Well, I forgot my pencil, so I thought I'd show you those two shots right there. I think my elevation is pretty damn good. Just gotta get the windage correct now. Okay, I gave a couple little taps on that dovetail sight to the right. Should be able to move it to the left, get closer to the bullseye. And right now the sun is behind some clouds, so I'm gonna have to hold up until the conditions are right for me to get a number across my chronograph. All right, I'm getting a little impatient. I'm gonna go ahead and take this shot and hope for the best. Chronograph says 207, and you can see where that ball hit. Now that's only 3 shots. I get it. But I want you guys to see, if you can, how far over I had to move that dovetail sight to hit the bullseye at that point. Okay, you can see how much I had to move it, and if you can look underneath the bottom side of the dovetail sight, you can see how much is hanging over. But let's see if this remains consistent. .719. And there's those last 2 shots in the bullseye. Now I will tell you right now, I'm feeling just a little bit of creep on that trigger. So like my 1860 Army old silver, I'm going to take a few swipes when I go in and clean it off that trigger and see if I can't get some of that creep out. .152. I'll just about bet that one's supposed to be a 7. But there again, it's not as brightly sunny as it was just a moment or two ago. All right, I'm going to go see whether it impacted the target. Well, as you can see, that one punched the first shot. So I think I pretty much got it, don't I? .744. Oh, excuse me, 749. So as you can see, I hit the same spot, just maybe a hair above it, or went through the same hole. And just so that you'll know, I just walked back from my shop and I actually pinned that sight in place. So there was no movement, just pinning it. Okay, a word about these RWS caps. What I have noticed, and if I can get one balanced here, the edge of my knife, they do split. But if you can see on the top of it, there's this little tit. Okay? Now, on this particular cylinder, instead of slick shotting them myself, what I did is I took my Dremel tool and the thinnest blade I got and just cut a groove across the top, about, yay down. Okay, I just cut it a little bit more, Perfect. That's all I did. But even when I was shooting my 1860 Army old silver, I noticed the same thing with these RWS caps. Sometimes, even with the slick shots, they don't always split. They'll stay on the cone, but what happens instead is because of that back pressure, the back of the cap is deforming. You get that little tit right there. That's really that little part of the hammer that would normally rest in those nipples to let you carry 6 rounds. Those safety notches, there we go. But that's what some of these do. So what I'm going to do now is, instead of reloading this with RWS caps, I'm going to load this with, I'll have to see what I got. I think what I've got in my box right now is a CCI number 11s, and I'll let you know once I get loaded, and then we'll see how they come off of these nipples also. Okay, the caps are CCI number 10s, and I purposely left the chronograph in the sun, and I did that to see if it's still going to record numbers. Maybe not. It says 183. I'm going to go see where that bullet hit. It looks like it hit low. Yeah, that one hit low, but at least it's still, you know, got a vertical line. And again, that just may have been me, because I am feeling a little bit of creep in that trigger. Yeah, that recorded 165, and it looks like that one hit just the bottom of the bullseye ring. Go get a close-up and probably just pull the chronograph away. At least I've got some usable numbers for my information, at least. Yeah, you should be able to see from the previous recording where that bullet hit. Yeah, it looks like a little to the outside, but I'm still well within my self-imposed 4-inch, you know, kill zone. So I'm still happy with that. And that could be just that the gun's getting a little dirty too. Guess I'll have to wait till I get it into the editing program to see where that impacted, but I think it's that shot just to the outside, little to the left. And that could just be because the gun's getting a little dirty. That's my excuse, but either way, that's still well within my self-imposed 4-inch kill zone. Alright, I got 2 more shots to shoot. No issues with the caps, and I can see where that one impacted, so I like it. So this is always the tricky part, getting everybody a view of down the barrel. And from where I'm standing, it's not all that bad. I mean, I have seen worse. I honestly have. But there's not really a huge buildup until you get towards the front of the barrel, and I wouldn't really say a huge buildup. If you guys can see that. And once again, that's my mesquite peanut shell. So let me get the camera turned around and I'll make some closing comments. Okay, how did I do? Fortunately, I was able to capture 6 good numbers, and the 6-shot average was 713 with a spread of 55. And you know, I showed the target, but these were the first 2 shots, and then everything else is right here within my self-imposed 4-inch kill zone. So for me, that's adequate. But more importantly for me, now I have some sort of feel for what 30 grains of my mesquite peanut shell will do in a 5.5-inch barrel. And as far as I'm concerned, that's pretty impressive when you stop and think about that Richards, that 1860 Army Richards conversion. I'm getting these numbers with modern day gunpowder and a 240 grain bullet. So that's pretty impressive for black powder as far as I'm concerned. Somebody may have a different opinion. That's okay. Alright, I want to talk about, and even with this in mind, how does this information serve you in real life application? Okay, now I know that in this day and age, nobody's really going to carry, unless you really have the mind set for it, and I have the mindset for it, to carry a cap and ball revolver out in the field. Okay, so let me just start with a real life experience. The second to last time I hunted deer up in these Manzano Mountains, I came up into a little berm, and I knew that there was a watering hole, and the watering hole was full of water. And it was about the middle of the day or thereabouts, and I came up and I looked across the watering hole, and there's the black bear. And I'm guessing, I know it's hard to judge weight, and everybody likes to, make the critter bigger than what it really was, but I'm guessing it was between 350 and 400 pounds. It was a big bear, okay? And the reason I say that is because I had an opportunity to watch it for about 20 minutes. Okay, so I came up, had my muzzleloader in hand, and I had my Remington police model on my side. Okay, sheriff's model. And I stopped cold, and that bear was on the ground, belly on the ground, its head on its paw, lapping up water. That bear didn't have a clue I was there. Not one clue. After several minutes, it got up and it turned and made its way halfway up the berm. And I thought, whew, bear's leaving. But then the bear turned around and went right back down on his belly and continued lapping up water. For one thing, bears in the woods don't frighten me. Mountain lions? Absolutely. Okay? But the point that I'm getting at, in this day and age, I could not have drawn my cap and ball revolver and shoot that bear because it's illegal. That bear was no threat to my existence. Okay? So having a revolver loaded in the woods and watching somebody's video I was able to get through 7 cylinders before the revolver gummed up and jammed. What do you do with that information? It's not going to serve you in real life, because in the woods, if I had to draw my revolver and shoot that bear, I'd have only gotten 6. Out of a clean revolver, it's not going to gum up. So how does figuring out how many cylinders you can get through before it gums up and the revolver becomes inoperative, how does that information serve you in real life? Because you're never going to find yourself in that situation. Okay? Like today, you saw that I loaded off the gun, right? I demonstrated that. I got my tackle box right here with a whole container of lube. How do you know that when I pulled this cylinder off to reload it, I didn't wipe a little lube right there? Because that's real world shooting. If you've got your tackle box with you when you're out shooting, do you really have in mind, let's see, I'm not going to do anything because I can get through 7 or 8 cylinders before it gums up. No. If it does start gumming up, even after the 3rd cylinder, more than likely, like me, you've probably got a rag in your tackle box and you're just going to wipe it down a little bit, put a little bit more lube on it. That's real world shooting with a cap and ball revolver. Like I said, yeah, it makes great videos. It looks good on YouTube, but in reality, give me a situation when you're going to take this out and carry a weapon like this. Give me a situation where you're really going to have to go through 6 or 7 cylinders before you realize, oh shit, it's going to gum up and I can't get no more out of it. No. In reality, is if I have to draw this to even dispatch a bear, 3, 4, 5 shots, and I get lucky, the bear goes down, or the javelina goes down, or the wild boar goes down, whew, I stop the threat. You're going to go back to camp that night, and you're going to wipe the gun down. Aren't you? That's real world with a cap and ball revolver. Anything else, as far as I'm concerned, is just fantasy YouTube videos. Okay? That's all that is. Because even with a Remington, even though my arbor pin, my cylinder pin has got grooves cut in, I did that a long time ago. Even though that has grooves cut in it to help move some of that grease, make it a little easier to cock the gun, under what situation, even with a Remington, are you going to find yourself into where you have to shoot more than that one cylinder? Because you're not going to have time to change out the cylinder. Which brings me to this point. There's also a lot of videos out there too that I've seen where people are disparaging the Pale Rider scenario. You know, where Clint Eastwood walks down the street of the town and he changes it out and then he finished shooting. That is fine. Because back then, they may not have done that. And there's a lot of guys out there that make up videos disparaging that. Well, they wouldn't have really done that back then. They would have never carried a spare cylinder. Who cares? In today's modern world, we can do that, can't we? That's why I've got spare cylinders with my Remingtons. Because we can do that. I don't care about the history of whether they carried spare cylinders or not. Just like there's not one recording in a newspaper anywhere in this country where 2 guys are facing off in the middle of town and draw. There's not one newspaper article anywhere that ever happened. So that's Hollywood fantasy. Just like Clint Eastwood in Pale Rider, that's Hollywood fantasy. But that doesn't mean we can't do that today because we live in a real world. And that's why I prefer to carry my Remingtons when I'm out in the woods. Because I have 2 spare cylinders and God forbid I have to change that cylinder out, or better yet, just say I've hiked a couple of miles from my camp, maybe 3, 4 miles, and I do have to unload my revolver. I don't have to carry extra powder, extra patches. I don't have to carry extra caps. I have that already ready to go in the spare cylinders, and within a matter of seconds I can change that out. That's real world. Modern day living with a cap and ball revolver. Okay? And I don't mean to be on a rant about this, but you know, at what point does fantasy YouTube videos end and real life begins? See, that's why you guys have never seen me do a video on this channel. Well, how many cylinders can I get through before it locks up? Because that's not real life. Real life is, if you need the dovetail in a front sight to make these things hit the point of aim, do it. Because that's real life. Well, that is, of course, if you don't ever plan on leaving a shooting range with a cap and ball revolver. And I do know and I recognize that there's other countries in this world that this is the only thing you are legal to carry. This is it. And I've also read comments, guys, if you're not aware of this, I've also read comments from guys on the other side of the world that pretty much confirm that what we get from Pietta and Uberti is the garbage of the guns. They get the better guns than what we get. That's why we have to keep tinkering with these when they just come out of the box. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. I can't confirm it. But that thought process, those comments are out there. Okay? So for me, I view what I do on this channel and apply everything to a real modern day context. Because you're never going to find yourself in a situation, especially if you carry a Colt, to where you're going to get more than 6 rounds off. So all that information about, well, I can get through 7 cylinders before that stuff don't matter. That just don't matter. What matters is what you do with the first 6 shots. That's real life with a cap and ball revolver. If you found this information useful or worth sharing with your bestest of buds, I hope you give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed by now, I wouldn't bother either. Bye.